What is the purpose of the radiator cap in your cooling system? And what are the signs and symptoms that you can get if your radiator cap goes bad? And also, why should you never put water in your coolant expansion tank? So today we're going to be doing this video on the Toyota Mark X, the Toyota Allion, and I'm also going to show you a different implementation on this Toyota Land Cruiser right here. But the information that I'm about to give you is going to apply to pretty much any make and model of car that you have. So let's get into what the radiator cap does in your cooling system. So obviously the first thing that your radiator cap does in your cooling system is that it is a seal for the cooling system to make sure that coolant doesn't spill out, and it's also the place where you can open and be able to fill your radiator with coolant. But the second thing is what gets a little bit more interesting, in that it is a regulator for the pressure in your cooling system. So if you look closely at your radiator cap, you can see there is a number at the bottom. This one says 0.9. The one on the Toyota Allion says 1.1, and basically that is the maximum pressure that is allowed to be inside the cooling system of the car that you're driving. So for example, on the Allion, it's only supposed to be 1.1 bar. On the car that I got this from, which is a Toyota Chaser, it's only supposed to be 0.9 bar in the cooling system, and that's the average figure that you're going to get on most systems. It's going to be between 1.1 bar and 0.9, or if you're looking at PSI, it's about 10 PSI to about 15 PSI. So if you look again at your radiator cap, it's spring loaded on the inside, and basically what this spring does is it compresses when the pressure inside the system reaches 0.9 bar. So when it gets to 0.9 bar, this spring is going to compress, and what that does is allows coolant to come from the radiator and flow out into the coolant expansion tank. So that way the radiator cap is able to regulate the pressure that is inside your cooling system, making sure that it stays constant. Okay, so then let's talk about why you should never put water inside your expansion tank. So basically, just like I've explained, as the pressure is bleeding from the cooling system, there's hot coolant that will be pushed out into your expansion tank. And if your expansion tank just has water, water has a very low boiling point, and once it gets to that boiling point, it starts to evaporate. And as you can see, the expansion tank has this pipe that comes out at the top here. This just allows it to vent to the atmosphere. So if you just put water in here, all that water ends up evaporating, and then the problem that causes is when the pressure in the radiator comes down, the radiator is supposed to be able to pull coolant from here back into the system to replace that coolant that was pushed out, and that way it continues to regulate the temperature and it doesn't draw air into the system. So other than hot coolant flowing into the expansion tank, you know that when your car is at operating temperature and you've been driving for a long time, the engine bay gets pretty hot, and even that can cause the water that is sitting in your expansion tank to get up to its boiling point and then end up venting out of the system, and that way the expansion tank ends up being empty. Then you're going to have a situation where your radiator is going to end up drawing air back into the system. And once you have air inside your system, then you have overheating issues that come up. So you should always put coolant into the expansion tank, because coolant has a higher boiling point. So even if the radiator pushes hot coolant onto this side, it won't evaporate as quickly as water does. Yes, there is some evaporation that does happen, but it is at a very, very slow rate when it comes to coolant as compared to you having water in the system. So there should always be coolant inside your expansion tank, and don't put water. So the importance of pressurizing the system is that it brings up the boiling point of your coolant. So if the system is not pressurized, your coolant can end up boiling up very quickly, but because of the radiator cap regulating that pressure, making sure that it is 0.9 bar, it allows the cooling system to remain at a lower temperature, giving it that higher boiling point. The main problem that you're going to experience if you have a bad radiator cap is overheating in the cooling system. Like I said, the radiator cap helps to pressurize the system and maintain that pressure, which keeps the boiling point of your coolant higher, and that way your system is able to run at a much cooler rate more consistently. So if your radiator cap is bad, then you're going to have a situation where it's not able to build pressure, and that can cause fluctuations in your temperature and cause overheating. Don't go and put a 1.1 where you're supposed to put a 0.9, because that can add excess pressure into the system. And excess pressure could mean things like coolant leaks, because the pressure is just getting too high in the system and your radiator cap is not able to bleed that pressure out and regulate it. So you're going to have things like coolant leaks and mainly overheating in your system. So just check your radiator cap if you have any of those problems. Okay, so a slightly different implementation of the system is what we have here on this Land Cruiser with the VD engine. You can see that the expansion tank is where the radiator cap has actually been put. So you just fill the car from here, and then this right here is your radiator cap, but also acts as your expansion tank. So you can see that it still does have a pressure rating. This is in kPa. That's also just a unit of measure for pressure, so you can convert kPa to bar. This should be just around the same 1.1 or 0.9 bar that we're looking at on the Allion, and the other cap I got from the Toyota Chaser. So just in the same way, this one also has a small spring on the inside. If the pressure builds up to 108 kPa or 1.1 bar, then you have this small spring get compressed inside, and then it will vent that pressure out of here from the expansion tank. So it's just a slightly different implementation, but it all works the same. Okay, great. That was just a quick video about radiator caps. I hope somebody learned something. And obviously, if you're having any problems with your cooling system, feel free to bring your car down here to Z Gear HQ, which is Tunex Automotive. We'll get your car running at the right temperature. And of course, if you want to get a good deal not to miss on a car like these ones or any of the other units that we have here at Z Gear, you can come through Z Gear Classified. We will get you guys a very nice deal on your next car. Until the next one, guys, take care and drive safe.